Well, good evening everyone. I was doing some lawn mowing and mowing around this gravel conveyor behind me made me think of a story that I thought I'd tell. I'm waiting yet on the exhaust manifold for my 60, so I thought I'd tell you a little story. You probably have already guessed that includes my old friend Alan Rudolph. I'm going to show you a picture of him here. That's him standing over the Model A engine in his Pete and Pole airplane that was built in 1933. Back over 50 years ago, in the early 70s when I was a teenager, I would spend as much time as I could, or quite a lot of time, over by Alan Rudolph, the neighbor, and I would listen to his stories for hours on end of things he did in his life. And this is one of the stories. I thought I'd bring it to you. This is the conveyor. It's 20 feet long or so. One nice fall afternoon, Alan and I were walking around his property, and he was pointing things out to me and telling me stories. And we looked at this conveyor, and me as a teenager asked him, a curious teenager, as you can see, it's all bolted together. You know, lattice framework with angle irons and bolted. And I proceeded to ask him, why didn't you weld it? And his reply was, well, we didn't have a welder. Well, they built it, him and his brother Jim built it in the 20s in the wintertime. And electric welding wasn't even really in practice at that time yet. And he replied to me that not only we didn't have a welder, we didn't even have an electric drill. He proceeded to tell me that he and his brother Jim spent the winter building this conveyor, drilling all the holes with a hand brace. So you can bet that all the angle irons were cut by hand with a hacksaw. And I'll show you some of the features of the conveyor. You will see some welding on it, or I would imagine some of the welding was done at a later time. Anyway, this conveyor belt I put on it a couple years ago just for displaying it up at Baraboo at the show there in August. You can see here for troughing rolls, they just had a Babbitt pillow block with, I don't know what type of fitting you call those. It's got like a thread twist to it to screw the gun on. And then they obviously turned out angled wooden blocks for each end to form troughing rolls for the conveyor belt. When I was young, I remember almost all of those were still on it, but have long since rotted away. And this is obviously where the motor sat. The framework was on it, but I put those boards on because I had to show I set a engine I have on top of it just for display. Now we'll come around, and if you come around front, you see the hitch was removable. You'd see it bolted on those 3 points. Only thing I can figure is that way they could move it in closer to the bank. Here you can see where there would have been a flat belt drive up to the motor, and that would have been a tensioner. I'm sure acted as a clutch too for engaging it. And then there was a chain drive all the way up to the top. And here, this was obviously a guide with wood blocks bolted inside it. Keep the chain from jumping around too much. And here was the conveyor bolt tensioner. Just worked by gravity to tighten the conveyor belt. And here you can see one of the return rollers. It's just a straight wood roller they had made. These up here are steel ones. but this was a wood one here. And here you can see where they joined two angle irons together. They laid one inside the other, drilled and riveted them. I'm sure all hammered by hand. So to me it's a very interesting piece. Oh, and you can see the steering wheel they used on the shaft for winching to raise and lower the conveyor, with the pawl and ratchet to hold it. And now I'm going to tell you what I always consider the best part of the story. I asked him, or I made a comment to him about, wasn't that a lot of work, drilling and bolting that all together? And I'm going to tell you exactly how he replied. Now you have to remember, they were loading Model T gravel trucks with 1-yard gravity dump boxes. And as I said, when I commented to him, it wasn't that a lot of work drilling all those holes by hand to build that conveyor, this is what his reply was. Alan told me it was a lot easier to shovel gravel this high than it was to shovel gravel this high into the trucks. You couldn't hardly argue with that line of reasoning. Well, I hope you enjoyed this little story, and let me know if you'd like me to tell more stories as they come to mind, because he told me many stories of his life and things he had done in construction business from the 20s through the 60s. So thanks again for watching. Hopefully my manifold will be ready for the 60s soon. Bye.